Welcome to the stage, CEO of AG1, Kat Cole, and CEO of Burning Man, Marian Goodell.
Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, hello. We're so excited to see you. I'm Kat, the CEO of AG1, and longtime burner, got married at Burning Man, and it is my honor to be here with Marian, the CEO of the Burning Man Project Movement Organization, and we are going to dig into the very serious business of play, but also crack open some elephants in the room around perception, principles under pressure, and leadership amongst a world that is in many ways at odds with the very values the organization is trying to bring forward. So Marian, welcome.
Thank you, Kat.
Thank you for being here.
I'm looking forward to our conversation. One thing we didn't talk about is asking the audience who here has not been to Burning Man.
Oh yeah, show of hands. Not been.
Yeah. Half the room.
Half?
Yeah.
All right.
That's great.
That's an important.
It's so easy to speak to the group of people that have been to Burning Man. It's nice to know so many
Yes.
have not been to Burning Man.
So, how long? Tell us a bit of your journey, a bit about your journey with Burning Man, and what's changed the most over the years. And take this wherever you want to ground this half burners, half will be burners next
Right,
year.
my answer
room.
changes slightly, seeing that the room has I've never been to Burning Man. I first went to Burning Man in 1995. I felt it, even though there was only 4,000 people, that I had been drawn into something that made me want to be a little different, to play differently, to show up differently, and literally to play differently. And I was at the Academy of Art College getting my master's in photography, and I'd seen photos that drew me there. And between 95 and 96, I then sought out the founders because I wanted to know what the fuck I just experienced. There was no internet. I went to the library to do that. I actually then found myself in the middle of the organization and helped build the 1997 event and then so on. And as CEO, this has been since 2013. We created a nonprofit in 2011. We had been an LLC building the event. And we saw that the future for what is the Burning Man culture meant we wanted to take the structure more seriously for the long-term survival of the Burning Man culture. And what I've seen change over time actually is almost mimics my own journey. In 1997, as the internet came to life, we started hearing from burners that would leave Burning Man and wanted to know how to make it happen in their own towns. And the internet then provided that opportunity to give people an email address and started Austin burners and New York burners. So what's really changed, for instance, is that last year in 2024, 105,000 people experienced Burning Man culture not in Black Rock City.
Wow.
70,000 were in Black Rock City. So it's eclipsing the event. And so that's the part that's really changed, is for when I meet people. I met someone the other day, and she said, I've never been to Burning Man, but I've been to Africa Burn. I said, you have to now say, you've been to Burning Man. You've been to Burning Man in Africa. That's what's changed.
And how has your leadership evolved moving from 4,000 people, Black Rock City, the evolution of the business model, not only with the evolution to a nonprofit, but also the expansion to global markets where cultures collide in beautiful and mostly magical ways, and maybe not always so, as you're bringing this new experience to different markets. I would love, as leaders here who have founded businesses who are expanding in different ways, to hear about your leadership journey as the business has transformed so meaningfully.
Honestly, we let a lot of it's very decentralized. So the only governance we really have is when they want to have an event that's affiliated, they need to follow the principles and practices. And if you're affiliated, your event may get named in our publicity, on our email, on our website, and that kind of thing. We're very cautious about what we do in America that would affect other countries. So places like China, places like Singapore, Middle East, like their social rules and values are definitely different than what you would see in Black Rock City. So we have to be super careful that we're not seen as pitching people using language or assumptions about global culture. And that's very active currently. It's like even internally we're looking at our language. And so I'm more interested in when it comes up locally, then that's when we stimulate what people are interested in and how they can come towards it.
I'd love for everyone to hear a bit more about the operations and business behind Burning Man. What is the operation like? How is it structured? Anything you'd like to share? Because to some, if you've been there, it's the many things it can be. And if you haven't, you might have misperceptions that hopefully will crack wide open in this conversation. But what most have no idea about is the business behind the movement and the organization. So could you tell us a bit about that?
The business is a nonprofit. We've been a nonprofit since, I think 2011, we got the nonprofit status. We have 18 board members. We have 145 regular year-round employees. We have about 1,000 temporary employees that are just seasonal for Black Rock City. And about 10,000 participants engaged directly in making Black Rock City happen. But I like to say that Burning Man has 70,000
That's right.
volunteers. So I hate using those figures. You know, on the surface, we're definitely not your average organization. We definitely lead and drive ourselves around the culture. And our values are to be in service and to be supporting the culture. We don't really have a product. We don't even use the word product. We don't use the word market. We don't use a lot of normal words in order for us to remember to maintain an internal culture of being connected to what we're doing and connected to what we're doing outside in the world.
So you mentioned principles. And principles at Burning Man are a heartbeat of the culture and are embodied inside and outside the organization. Could you give an overview for everyone here of the principles and a bit of how you think about them both for the organization, for the community, and how it shows up in your leadership? Because I want to bring us to when those principles come under pressure.
Well, the principles were, so that those that don't know, there are 10 principles. The principles were developed in 2004 as a response to this growth outside in the world. We put people on an email list and they would periodically ask questions. Why do we not sell anything at Burning Man? Why do we do this? Why do we do that? And Larry, I would send Larry into the email group or onto the internet because I knew some of the answers, but he loved to tell the stories. And eventually he got tired of answering these questions over and over again. And he went away for vacation at Mazatlan, Mexico, and he came back with 9 principles. And we teased him and we said, 9 principles, why not 10? And he came back the next day with his favorite, which was immediacy. And what the principles were designed to do was to describe what was happening and to do it in a way that showed they were not laws and they're not really monitored as laws. They're intended to be guideposts. And they're intended also, you can create a Burning Man experience that they all need to be there. You don't just have one of them. So you can have communal effort. There's a lot of communal effort. But you need communal effort. We want radical self-expression. We want people to also behave independently and radical self-reliance. So these are all meant to work together, and they create a dynamic tension that reflects the society and the culture that happens. So we expressed them to give people the opportunity to understand, well, how do I embody this? How do I help engage with others to bring them to the surface? And the dynamic tension of them is the part that probably is the most interesting. Mm-hmm. Decommodification is really easily misunderstood. People think decommodification means no money at Burning Man, no money out in the world, we don't like money. Why do people have salaries at Burning Man?
Let's talk about Burning Man's relationship with money.
Oh my God. That's probably the place that we're most easily misunderstood at this particular point.
Yeah.
I mean, this fall we were put in the position of being fundraising more than usual. And when people would read the online 990s, they were like, oh my God, how many employees and there's all these people making money and you're losing all the money. Well, a nonprofit is still a business. And our relationship with money has evolved. And just like our culture and our intention out in the world has evolved, so has our relationship with money. It's easy to assume that as an event, if you look at it through the lens of being an event, that, oh, well, we need to raise money selling tickets. But we've all watched the cost of everything go up. We've watched the cost of festivals, of conferences, of gatherings. And Burning Man wants to remain accessible to people of all walks of life, all over the world. So we don't want to just raise the ticket prices and say, damn the torpedoes, whoever can afford it gets to afford it, and that's who gets to come. We want the ticket prices to range for those that are artists and they're coming from across the country or across the world. We have our cheapest ticket is $225, and our most expensive ticket is $3,000. And you don't get anything different.
Yep.
What you get is the chance to know that we have deliberately set up a system so that you're supporting the opportunity for other people. And the conversation around money for many of us is not easy. And in this past couple of years, it's become a challenge for all of us. I mean, the world at the moment, and you're a business owner,
That's right.
the challenges just don't stop.
I don't know any organization that hasn't had the fundamentals of their business model directly challenged or meaningfully compromised in the last few years in one way or another, whether that was driven by growth that they couldn't support or a complete contraction or moving of the industry. So the Burning Man organization is not alone in this dynamic, but it is uniquely visible because of this decommodified ideal and principle at its heart amongst a world that functions on money.
I mean, people are so committed and passionate about it that they're afraid it will be eroded by money. And they're afraid it'll be eroded by bad decision making. Yeah. And they're afraid it'll be eroded by people in the community that are bad. And money is usually the first piece that people believe is what's taking that away from them. And this year was not the first time we've ever heard that. Mm-hmm. I think the first time I heard it really was when tech started showing up at Burning Man. And that was really 1999 and 2000. Mm. And people said the tech bros are ruining Burning Man. So money, and the question about money continues to come up because people are so afraid that something so passionate, so connective, will be eroded and ruined by the involvement of money. In fact, that's what we work really hard to keep away from what people's experiences are. We want them to come and have the experience and be together and create this bubble to help the transformation.
What were those conversations like in the moments? Again, you've been there, over a decade in the role, but much longer with the organization. And what are the conversations like when you have these moments where you need to revisit the entire model? Whether it's adding more fundraising so that ticket prices don't have to go up, or saying, you know what, we should have a $3,000 ticket and see how many people are going to pay that to support the organization. What are those conversations like? Are they hard? Are they easy because the culture says, let's experiment? I know many leaders here are faced with evolving their models. So tell us a little bit about the behind the scenes of that.
Well, I think, we're here to talk about play. We're wandering into play. And, play is a form of experimentation, of course. And also, I'm in the position of nurturing something that is cultural and also something that comes from the community. So we have to be really careful about how much we play with our ideas. We want to actually experiment with things that will improve the access for people. We want to experiment with things that will make the environment obviously more playful, more engaging, more joyful. We want to not be afraid of difficult moments. And many people here that are burners know that it was a difficult year for various reasons. We've had difficult years in 23 because it was raining and it was too hot in 22, and then we survived through the pandemic, difficulties.
The rain was magical.
The rain was great.
The
Who
rainbows.
was there for the rain? Yeah.
Rainbows.
Rain at Burning Man. We were having a conversation.
But people were hearing the National Guard is coming in and you're trapped and are you okay? And it's like, we are partying meeting, in the mud.
We had a meeting with officials that had 64 different agencies on, including the FAA and the National Guard and the governor of Nevada, who said, we've briefed the White House. And we're like, the White House?
for anyone who doesn't know, rain came to the desert. And this beautiful, unprecedented, well, a lot for the desert. And it does something very magical to this soil, to this clay, and turns it into quite an interesting slushy experience.
It's a dry lake bed. So, there could be 3 feet of, it could be more like, it's about knee deep when it rains off season.
Yeah.
And it was more like ankle deep. And the longer it rains, the longer it takes to dry. And it rained for about 12 hours. So it took more or less 2 days to dry. And literally the sheriff told us to evacuate the property. And we were like, we're not over yet. We're not leaving.
No,
Why would you? But, that relates to what you just asked me, which is, what do we do? Where do we experiment? Like, we'd never had that situation before, but we knew enough as the clouds were approaching to move fuel near generators, to clean out the first round of toilets that we could. We knew to stage things in preparation. We'd never had to do it before. And it was a little bit of an experiment for us even internally to understand. We learned a bit about our communication systems. We started using our handheld radios.
Yes.
Whereas people aren't accustomed to listening to the radio anymore, that was the primary source of community communication. And then we have 3,000 radios that are on different staff members, so we started using that. So we use innovation even in the process of just trying to get through a rain event at Burning Man.
You did an incredible job. It was unprecedented. And every leader, if you're in business long enough, or leading a movement long enough, you will come into what others may call a crisis, and by many definitions it might be. But it's also a moment for your values to be demonstrated. It's a moment for your principles to show up, and it's a moment for your team to shine. And yours did, and it has many times over. So let's bridge more into play. How do you bring play into the organization? I think many people here might have an idea of how the events bring play out into the world, but talk a bit about that. The event, the culture, what do people get wrong about it? And then how does it show up in your business?
It's funny, when we decided to do this talk, and we talked with Jody, and we talked to Carrie, and it was all like play is what really came up. You can talk about Burning Man, but really what is relevant about it and why is it important, and what about play threads through our lives in ways that really can resonate whether you go to Burning Man or not. From a business standpoint, the joy of what I'm doing is fundamental to be able to keep doing it. And if we just came to the office all the time with the same little cubicles, which we don't have, we have an open floor plan, and we had to just buckle down and heads down, and we wouldn't see and feel what it is we're manifesting for others. So from a real visceral standpoint, we might resemble a tech company sometimes, or an ad agency. I used to work at an ad agency. We have Nerf guns. We have flying monkeys.
You have bananas in your background.
We have on our Zooms, through the pandemic, and it's stuck, periodically on specific days, we do funny backgrounds. On the day when ticket sales start, the ticketing department puts bananas in their background. Aww. Bananas. That
makes me want to gift your organization like bananas. 5 metric tons of bananas.
Yeah. We have something called Cake Day. We got tired of moving around cards all the time. And so Dave X, if anybody's been to Burning Man, you've seen fireworks, and Dave X is our internal pyro guy who runs all the pyro, and he's also our cake master.
Pyro guy?
The pyro
and cake
guy.
Master.
Exactly. And he makes sure each month that we recognize the people whose birthday it is. And Dave does not just list a bunch of names off. He usually does a video and gives us a history of art, or a history of Cake Day, or birthdays, or pyro. So he's creating narrative and storyline that is playful and fun, and it makes us, you don't have to have it literal. You're doing spreadsheets. You're having meetings. The joy of that moment in the morning, on Monday mornings, that sets you up for the whole week.
Yeah.
Your, brain power of you've got to start your week, and it's like, okay, I gotta go to work. But if you're coming to work and everybody's joyful, we're talking about Cake Day, we're talking about art at Burning Man, I really believe that we can't ever be too corporate. We really need to the organization needs to exist in a playful place, But we also have a lot of, it's a serious place. We have employees. We interview people. It's always funny to say, hey, this is not like Black Rock City. There's real work here. We wear clothes.
You wear clothes.
We do have trash cans. Black Rock City doesn't have trash cans for those that haven't ever been.
How do you think about this idea of play when you are navigating some of your greatest challenges, whether it's seriousness or a groundedness has to lead through the moment, but still not losing yourself in the operations and in the black and white of it? How do you think about bringing that play forward even in tough times? What does that look like?
It's not easy. It's not easy when you're in the middle of it. I don't know that I actually bring play into it, per se. I look at what it is we're doing and imagine the importance and the value of creating that connectivity for everybody. That the purpose of Burning Man is to bring people together. We're helping create joy and connectivity. And, that itself is replicating a hope in humanity.
Yeah.
So my actual leadership self goes into the meaning of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's really kind of cool that the people that are in the organization, including the volunteers out there and even theme camps and artists and art cars, that's what inspires me as a leader.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much for me to go on the internet and see the pictures and see the stories. I do love watching Instagram. I've always loved Instagram because I'm a photographer. I love Instagram because it's a storytelling tool and the images. And that's what inspires me when I have a difficult moment, is to look at images of play and building things and people being together and dancing.
You just said a phrase a moment ago. You said, the joy is fundamental to showing up and doing what I do. And it reminds me of, I went through a really difficult time through COVID, as many people, was running restaurants, multi-billion-dollar business, completely decimated. My daughter was 7 months old and became deathly ill, literally on her deathbed. And there was a moment where everything felt so heavy. And so there's no world where play is coming into that moment, but a grounding of, I'm glad it's me. I know the why, and in this case, my daughter, or the responsibility to my franchisees, or you tapping in and being reminded of the joy that you're bringing around the world. This idea of all of us regrounding in our why. So if you're in a consumer business, hang out in your reviews channel. We have a reviews Slack channel, and I tell the team, don't go doom scroll on the internet when you need a brain break. Go to #reviews and go look at all of the customer interactions. And that would be Instagram post Burning Man. For you, staying really close there.
We have a hashtag Burning Man News also. And we also have one that's hashtag the good stuff, because sometimes the Burning Man News isn't always the good stuff. Grounding in yourself as a leader, no matter what is coming towards you. Obviously, there's tools that are other than just the ones that are obvious. But I look towards others. I feel very fortunate. I actually genuinely feel extremely fortunate. I don't know how I was so lucky that I got here, and that's what keeps me through the hard stuff. It's my job, and I love it.
Well, I'm glad it's you. I'm glad it's you, and I know your team is incredibly glad it's you. So we've talked about your leadership under pressure as things have evolved. We've talked about the principles under pressure, the conflict of a decommodified movement amongst the very real world, the default world that sits outside of Burning Man. I'd love to have you talk about community and why right now Burning Man is more relevant than ever, bigger and better than ever. The world is wild. It's always been wild. It'll keep getting wilder and weirder, but it's also heavier in some respects. Why is Burning Man so important right now?
Well, we're in a world, no matter where. The United States obviously is divided by people's ideas and ideologies, and it's happening worldwide. You hear about it every day. We know that there's geopolitical conflict, and we are creating a space very deliberately for people to actually come and be together. The whole point is to build together, is to collaborate together. And the thing about play, and if you've ever done any research about play, and when we were doing this, I was thinking I was going to refresh my brain about play. You know, we talk about neuroplasticity in lots of different contexts, but what happens at Burning Man, there is 7 days, 10 days, could be 3 days, but the intensity of it really rewires your brain to be connecting. Your whole point is to be building with others. Your whole point is to actually play, whether that's physical play like you're dancing, whether that's social play like you're creating an engaging theme camp, whether it's actually building something, it's an object-based play, you might be just doing, crafting. All of these things, if you do that enough, really sets you in a place of trust. You're building trust between people. The social play builds trust. That's why little children do it. It's why it's so important. In kindergarten, the playtime is so important. Creating opportunities for play. That's why there's recess. Like, come on. We create 7 days of recess. And that will bridge everything. You don't know, you don't need to know. You could care less what country someone is from. You could care less what their politics are. You care less what their income is. You get a chance to either dance with people, you get to build something, you get to build a camp, you might build an art car. You might actually not have built anything, but someone has fallen over, their bike is broken, or an art piece really needs help, and you happen to be that engineer on that specific kind of electrical.
Be there with exactly that tool,
yes,
exactly that moment.
And you feel needed and you feel necessary. So I think Burning Man I think that's why the regionals are growing. Like 100,000 people last year? That blew my mind.
Yeah.
And our ticket sales this year show that this year is going to be even more popular than last year. And it's because we are seeking that connection. Why is Summit so wonderful? It's because we get to be with each other. We get to see each other. Yeah. And at Burning Man, we get to build things, but we get to be also in an environment, a physical environment that deliberately creates stress. You have to build together. It's deliberately not comfortable.
Yeah.
But we need to be in places that create opportunity for us to storytell, to gather, to play, to build, to connect, period, no matter where you are.
In order to have the space and the capacity for that freedom and that connection over time, with more people coming to events, more cities, more countries hosting events, more ways the movement is showing up, there's no way you can keep ending the organization, adding more. At some point over time, we have to prune to create the space for what's new and next. I'd love for you to tell us about some things you've said no to, or that you don't do anymore in service of the things that you've been able to do.
What do we say no to? Well, we've actually had to, the very first time we said no to anything was actually growth. Until 2012, we always just, had more people. We've had to say, that meant that we had to limit the number of art cars, we had to limit the number of camps, size of camps. Constraint, actually, to me, is a building block for thinking differently and being more creative.
Absolutely.
We had to prune last fall. We had to reduce some of our employees, reduction in force, which was not fun. But we have done that before. Yep. We did that during the pandemic. And it creates new ways for the organization to look at, well, how is it going to function and what kind of changes does it really want to make? We say no in really fun ways. Like the government I think it was 2006, the federal government told us they wanted a large sign at the gate that said, say no to drugs. I said no.
You said no to saying no.
I said no to saying no. And they were really funny. And, it's been a whole journey. People assume that that Burning Man's been born out of psychedelics, and it hasn't been. But it was really funny that this guy, he said, well, Marian, you have to admit cannabis is a gateway drug. And I was like, to what? Like, stoners do what? What are you worried about?
Gateway to the couch.
Gateway to what? So I said no. Usually, honestly, the most no we do, we try not to say no to our culture. It feels really heartbreaking to not have all of what people want to bring creatively to it. We mostly say no to the government. I mean, believe it or not. The biggest pushback and the hardest work we do is more or less unseen by the participants. They don't really realize that the bubble that we create behind the scenes, working with money and the staff, and I still meet people that say, there's a CEO of Burning Man? I was like, that makes me really happy that if you perceive that it's a magical happening, a collaborative, co-created event, which it is, and that the infrastructure behind the scenes, we have 5 employees doing year-round government relations, ladies and gentlemen, 5. And that's federal, that's state, that's local, it's permitting for our properties, it's community relations, doing public meetings, but the hardest work is with the feds.
Yeah.
And, you know, another question I was asked yesterday by someone, well, why don't we buy private land? Private land in America is governed but locally. So you have elected officials for planning commission, county commissioners, sheriffs. Federal government, we're allowed to gather on public land. So they're actually mandated by the rules of the federal government for us to gather. And their morals and their values and their politics can't enter it. But if you're on local land in your own private property, you're at the vicissitudes of changing leadership. So I prefer to be on public land.
How do you think about this idea of government relations and the constant advocacy that you need to protect the space for you to do what you're doing? I deeply admire any organization, not just those that because they're on public land have to work with the government, but who make a decision to shape the environment that they're in. The old phrase, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. And it's a restaurant phrase, but true for all of us.
If you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. That's great.
And you advocating and having government relations is having a seat at the table. And how do you think, have you navigated any tensions, whether it's in the organization or optically, of actively participating in that government world or shaping the world? I'd love to hear about some of the tensions there.
Well, my favorite story was my own story of attending public meetings where the Resource Advisory Committee, which had about 12 members, and they were making decisions on use of the local land. These were different groups in different parts of BLM land. Some people don't know, Bureau of Land Management land comes under the Department of the Interior, and there's only 17 states that have BLM land. And Nevada has like 83% of government land. And I sat in the room just like this. It was a public meeting, and I kept asking questions. And they took a break, and this one gentleman, he was a miner, and he had this accent. He's like, little lady, come over here. And he said, you know, you should be up here. You should be represented up here, because they represented wild horses and local government and electricity and wildlife, and it was a huge bunch, but nobody the public was represented, but large-scale events weren't represented. So I ended up getting myself onto this committee because then he proposed, and it was really a game changer.
Yeah.
Because this group had been blocking processing our permit in 1998. Behind the scenes, their politics. So being able to have a seat at the table then gives you a chance. And actually, at the time, I had pink hair. They called me the young lady with pink hair.
Nice, memorable.
Yeah, it was memorable. I was like, okay, ladies, I can play with you. And it changed everything. Yeah. So I was able to respect what they needed on public lands. And by being at the table, there was less fear.
Yeah.
I love government relations for that reason. I love going to Washington. I can see Republicans, I see Democrats, we have both at the event. Mm-hmm. You know, people see Burning Man on all ends of the spectrum. You can look at whoever and whatever we're doing. All people like to have a conversation with us. So I love being part of the government relations. And
I feel like for those who've been to Burning Man, certainly in Black Rock City, but the principle of radical self-reliance, but also immediacy and being engaged is a template for running your own business and shaping community around the business. The being willing to pick up the phone and show up to the meeting. It's very easy, at least in the short term, to phone it in, to launch an e-commerce business, to launch a product, to get started, to get traction, to get investors. But actually driving sustainable growth over time of a movement, whether it's for-profit or nonprofit, or of a business, be it technology or consumer products, is dependent upon your ability to go radically participate in the environment that shapes it. So I do believe, at least I've experienced when I leave Burning Man, I am more likely to pick up the phone. I am more likely to go just grab a coffee and invite and connect. It has shaped my energy as a leader, even though it's very, very different businesses. What are ways you have heard over the years, because you have built deep relationships with many burners, whether they've been on your board, volunteers, or participants, also one of the 70 or 80,000 volunteers. What are some of the ways you have heard people bringing Burning Man experience, principles, values into non-Burning Man businesses or organizations?
You know, it's kind of cool. I don't know. 1996, we were on the cover of Wired magazine, and it said the New American Holiday, I think. And
how did you feel about that headline?
Well, I had just joined the organization, and Larry had no idea that Wired magazine was the equivalent of like Cosmo for the tech industry. And that at the company I was at the time, doing web development for Ford.com, yay, Mark Higbee, we love Ford. My buddy Mark, I've known for, we decided 30 years, 1995 we met. I was doing Ford.com's website, and so we had one copy of Wired magazine, and we would all pass it around at lunchtime, and it was dog-eared. And so when I started dating him, and he's like, oh, I did an interview, and we're going to be on the cover of Wired magazine, I knew it would change the face of Burning Man. What I didn't know was that as I had come there as an art student, a graduate student in art, and I had seen artists and creatives from the Bay Area, mostly West Coast at the time. It was, you know, still pretty underground. I mean, 4,000 people isn't that underground, but it still was. I was fascinated, and I know the Wired article was significant in bringing people that were entrepreneurs and businessmen to Burning Man. And as a woman who was raised by a businessman, I wanted to know, well, why? And I kind of made it my business to stalk people and be like, if I saw them mention it, you know, when I met Sergey Brin back in 1998, 99, that's the Google Doodle. So those that don't know, the first Google Doodle was a Burning Man symbol inside the letter O of Google. And he was telling you, yeah, when we had this conversation recently, because when they went to Burning Man, they wanted to let people know that they weren't attending to the servers. And Bob Pittman, who started MTV, when I heard that he went, I was like, Bob, why do you go to Burning Man? Like, businessmen are busy. Why would you get yourself a camper and shut down when there was no Starlink? Yeah. There was no internet at Burning Man. Like, if you wanted to get a phone call, you left Burning Man and you went to Gerlach and used a payphone, ladies and gentlemen. There wasn't even cell service in the town of Gerlach. It's like, Bob, why would you do that? Yeah. He said it was, it inspired him. He thought more creatively. It was inspiring to see creativity from other people. And it inspired him to think differently, and it gave him hope in humanity. Right? Yes. So beautiful. When we're leading businesses and we're put under that pressure, and we might be making huge products and things that change people's lives, we do need to keep and remember what humanity is like and how to have hope, and not to dive into what is so easily to drift into. And capitalism is fine. It's how you do it and what you do with it. And I want more leaders. I want more artists. I want more leaders. I want politicians. I want homemakers. I want truck drivers. I want beekeepers. I want students. I want kids. My uncle's 82 and he came to Burning Man last year. We have 80-year-olds. We have, you know.
My kids are coming next year.
Yeah.
I'll be there. This is my last burn with my husband solo, and then the babies are coming, 6 and 8. We don't know if we're going to be in Kidsville or not yet. We haven't decided. The whole camp's having babies, so.
There you go.
Lots of kids at Burning Man, for those who don't know. It's super exciting. So one of the things I've experienced coming back from the burn is there is a phenomenon people talk about decompression. This idea of the transition between this deep immersion in hope and creativity and almost a loss of sense of time back to the default world where time is a very real thing and it moves so fast, and it's quite jarring to go from one to the other. When leaders take the time to play, whether it's at Burning Man, give themselves a vacation, spend time with their family, just go deep and refill the bucket, and hopefully not let the bucket get too drained, because the how they do what they do, to your point, you do capitalism, it's the how you do it. What are some ways you have seen be effective to transition from this world of deep play and exploration, which I'm sure happens even for you and your team, back into the day-to-day and bringing those principles into the day-to-day in a way that's practical?
I think it's as simple as sometimes, thanks Candace for giving me the little hand. Where's Candace locked there? Look, little fingers. Yeah. Like, it is as simple as little tools of play that you can bring into your daily life. There's a lot of things to do. I mean, you have kids, like raising a family, and I know, look at the little hands. I mean, come on. There's more little finger hands. Look at this. There's little hands.
I need little tiny AG1
tiny
bottles.
Hands. So they're carrying these around to be playful. Okay, these are people I know that run businesses and do things out in the world. And last night when she gave that to me, it made me laugh, and I had put them on my fingers, and it changed the way that I was smiling, just like you're smiling right now.
I have all these ideas.
We should be carrying tools of play and engagement with us more often. We do it with our kids. So how can we do it in our businesses? How can we do it with our friends? My favorite parties are the ones where, in fact, last night, I missed Olivia Steele's work with the bandanas, and I was so bummed. I arrived at midnight and there weren't any more bandanas, and I'm so hoping that I can go there tonight because
she's magical.
Just playing made me want to sit down and do something creative. So I think that we should look for ways in our lives, not just the obvious ones, but we should look for ways to have more play. You're one of the most playful people I know. You like live and breathe play. And the funny thing about him is when I first saw him and how playful he is, I misunderstood it. Like, play can come across as like, whoa, but play also is a way to engage. And once you get to know Dave, like, that's his love language, is play. So he makes more friends, he knows more people because he plays. Candace last night, I mean, the fact that I see like a dozen people with little hands on their fingers mean they've been engaging with each other. Yeah, they've got their own little subcult. And I know that she has several dozen more, so if you really want to have your little fingers, she's right there with her hand up in the air. You can have a little hand. Play, I mean, I didn't quite get it. I realized, and because we only have 5 more minutes, the first year I went to Burning Man was 1995, and I didn't understand what I had seen. I just understood that people wanted to, I made a hat, I had pinwheels, I made my pinwheels by hand, I put them in a styrofoam thing that blew in the wind. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew that the first time it happened, someone said, "I love your hat." I took a pinwheel out and I gave it to them. And then I realized that was what I was going to do because they were spinning, and then I went back and I made more. And then I called my mom and I was like, and I'm not that close with my mom to call her after I go to Burning Man, but I remember talking to her saying, I just had this experience. And she told me it reminded her of Montessori school. And Montessori is teaching and doing and play. And I realized, that's the first time I realized, holy shit, that is part of what really made me feel connected. And it's something that comes up more and more often. There's like a resurgence in the conversation about how important play is.
Absolutely.
So I've been really stoked to actually use that as the thread of our conversation today, because you don't have to go to Black Rock City. Like, Burning Man can be, it's a cultural way you can be, and you can be playful and not even be a burner, and you can just be like, this is who I am and this is how I'm going to play with you. And it'll break down barriers and it'll make you feel connected, and you might want to build and do something big with somebody.
And you're a CEO of a global movement, a magical event, and that's very serious business, but you're also known for being magically fun and having that play as a part of who you are. I don't know for each of you what your journey as a leader or founder has been. I was a very young leader, and I've been running businesses since I was an older teenager, and raised my sisters, was alone with my mom, a lot of leadership very early. And an outcome of that, for the many beautiful benefits it brought, was a level of seriousness that I felt I needed to bring forward, because over time I was leading teams and among peers of people who had been in business longer than I'd been alive. So I'm 20 and they're 50 or 60, and they're my peers. I'm 26, they're in their 60s. And whether conscious or subconscious, seriousness and groundedness became my way to feel equal And I remember I was a president of a billion-dollar brand, and I was 30 years old, and we were turning it around out of the Great Recession, and I did a survey with my team, asking for feedback. And there were all kinds of really great, typical areas of feedback, but a theme was, you are funny, but not fun. And I was like, that's actually the truth. But I have pockets. I have moments. I'm a partier, I'm a dancer, I'm deep in culture, but it was never showing up in the workplace. And so we did 3 things. One, who's your pyro and cake guy?
Dave X.
Dave X. So I anointed a version of a Dave X. I said, well, who in the survey is rated as both funny and fun? This is their joy. This is their identity. They bring this to the world with very little effort. And we, for a period of time, gave me some training wheels and brought in an ambassador of fun. It was their job to bring the props. So we got feedback, and they're like, we need props, we need toys, and we need some events where we do not work together. Because I would have never initiated those things as a leader, candidly. I was just in and driving.
Well, you learned a lesson about play.
That's right. And this was pre my Burning Man cracking me open even more. And it changed me in small, subtle ways. But I started to see moments where I could be more playful as a leader without it degrading the level of respect people had for me as a professional. And so I resisted it. And maybe there are other reasons people resist it, because they're very different from others in the room and don't want to detract from the credibility that we have. And I think there's a danger in that over time, especially now in what's needed in modern leadership, which is courage. And it takes courage to be playful. You got to really love yourself and be comfortable in your own skin and know that having fun, playing a joke, or bringing a finger hand, or whatever that thing is called, is not going to make me lesser of a leader. And in fact, it's part of bringing myself, my full self, to the table. So for everything that you do, how you model play, integrity, values, principles, leadership, and your organization, to the Burning Man team that's here, thank you. We are honored to have been able to learn more about you and your journey and your organization and the real business of play. Thank you for leading the way.
Well, thank you all for being here.